So how come they call it Fever Swamp?
People around here believe there's a fever that comes from this swamp. You get confused, turned around. Sometimes people go in and are never heard from again.
There is no such thing as a werewolf.
You will beware. You're in for a scare.
If you've seen my other two episodes, then you will know that Goosebumps was a made-for-kids TV show that first aired October 27th, 1995, and lasted until November 16th, 1998, releasing a total of 74 episodes. Each episode was adapted from its book version, which was written by R.L.Stine. Many people have referred to Stine as the Stephen King of children's books, and rightfully so. As far as I'm concerned, he wrote some of the scariest books I had ever read as a child, right behind this nightmare of a series. While Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was truly horrifying, it lacked personality, character, Tim Jacobus. Not to say that this cover art is bad in any way, it's not. It's truly scary. I mean, I wouldn't even want to have these books flipped upright in my room at night as a kid. But now Goosebumps, on the other hand, its cover just cries out to your imagination. At the very top, the word Goosebumps drips down the cover. You have this wolf perched on a rock, overlooking this bright lime green water with trees reaching down into it. His teeth look to be as sharp as knives, with drool dripping off of them. Right behind him is a full moon, which we can only guess he's howling to. Beside him is a clean shirt and hat. This wolf didn't just get done eating someone, he is someone. And the title? The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. Just by looking at this cover and reading the title, you're given a great idea of what kind of story lies within. The Werewolf of Fever Swamp was first published in December of 1993 by Scholastic. For 73 weeks, this book remained on USA Today's top 150 best-selling books, reaching a position of number 24. Publishers Weekly listed this book as the 209th best-selling children's paperback book of all time, selling more than 1,577,000 copies to date. Dang! When this book was converted to a TV episode, it was also met with similar success. The episode first aired on May 17th, 1996. It was a 1-hour television special being shown during prime time, and you knew you were watching a special when the man himself, R.L. Stine, introduced the episode. He shares some brief history about werewolves, and then hopes you'll enjoy this episode of The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. The episode begins with some instrumental Southern type music playing in the background as we are introduced to our main character, Grady Tucker, who has just moved into a new house with his family. How original. This house is in awful condition, so I hope one of his parents is experienced in remodeling or carpentry because it's going to need it. While Grady and his mother are looking over their fantastic new house, they hear a scream come from the next room over. It turns out to be his sister Emily screaming at a snake that somehow made its way into the medicine cabinet.
Cool.
Emily, we live near a swamp now.
After Emily is told by her dad that she will need to get used to all these creepy crawlers now that they live in a swamp, Grady is told to release the snake somewhere outside in the woods. Grady decides to take the snake as deep into the woods as he possibly can, and then quickly realizes he is lost. Now again, if you've seen my other two review videos, you will know how important I think it is to have a convincing environment to film in. Thankfully, with many of these specials, they did not solely film within a studio. I know some sets can be very convincing, but to me, nothing beats the real thing, and I love the setting of this episode so much. This swamp has thick woods, and light seems to struggle to break through the treetops. The slight fog adds to the eeriness, and the forest floor is just covered in leaves and sticks. Grady starts to get worried, and then the camera reveals that he is in fact being followed. Out of nowhere, he runs into this raggedy-looking man. Then we cut to a commercial break. Not knowing what happens between these two, we jump to the next day where we learn that Grady's father and mother are some sort of scientists who are conducting an experiment to see how well a certain species of deer adapt to a swamp environment. Mr. Tucker also tells Grady that the stranger he ran into yesterday is a hermit who lost his family a while back and now lives off the land peacefully.
He lost his family a while ago, and ever since then it's been a little strange, but he just lives off the land, doesn't harm anybody.
Like any other kid his age, Grady still expresses his dislike for this new place and claims something just doesn't feel right. Later on, while playing catch with himself, Grady meets Will Blake, a boy around his age that lives next door. Will tells Grady that most people don't really move into Fever Swamp, they move out, and that they're the only kids around. After hearing some noises coming from the woods, Will shares some history of Fever Swamp with Grady.
You been in yet?
Yesterday.
Did you get lost?
Yeah.
People say the swamp starts to grow inside your head. You get confused, turned around. Sometimes people go in and are never heard from again.
This is actually a really interesting scene. I love the idea of the swamp being some type of hypnotizing / confusing presence that alters your state of mind. Boys being boys, they go check out the swamp, and Will reassures Grady that he knows his way around. As the guys explore, we get some more information about why this place is named Fever Swamp.
People around here believe there's a fever that comes from this swamp. It makes your body get hot like an oven, and it gets inside your head and starts boiling your brain. Makes you do crazy things, even makes you run into the swamp and stay there.
All of a sudden, they hear a strange noise close by and decide to make a run for it.
Oh no.
What is it? Shut up and run!
It turns out it was the hermit, and while hiding from him, Will tells Grady that he is the reason people keep going missing around here.
The moon is full tonight. You'll hear him howling and you'll know exactly what he is. Nothing else on earth howls like that.
Like what?
Like a werewolf.
That same night before dinner, Grady hears something howling in the distance and is completely convinced about Will's story. He tells his family everything about what he heard today, and surprise, surprise, no one believes him. To his family's credit, crazy Grady comes right out and says the W word,
A werewolf.
and expects his family to take him seriously. Any kid at that age knows you gotta break it to him slowly and at least have a little bit of evidence besides some story a kid told you that you had just met that day. I mean, hasn't he ever seen a Goosebumps episode before? And it turns out he has, because in the very next shot, he has a limited edition Haunted Mask skateboard sitting in his room. In the middle of the night, he wakes up covered in sweat and runs to check his temperature. After finding out he's okay, he goes to his balcony to get some fresh air and looks down into the woods. He sees movement and runs downstairs to double check all the doors, but then realizes the back door is ajar. His sister and mom rush downstairs to see what all the excitement is about and joke with him about being scared. But my goodness, who wouldn't be? Dogs kill people all the time, lady. Stop feeding your dog for a couple days and see how friendly he gets.
He was being licked to death.
Can we keep him for a while?
With no collar and some convincing words from Grady,
Oh, come on, Dad. Life in the country is not complete without a dog.
they decide to keep the dog as their own, making it clear that he sleeps outside. The next day, Grady's mom is setting up a telescope so that she can view the lunar eclipse that will happen later that night. Keep that in mind.
Spectacular. The sun, the moon, and the earth will be lined up, so the earth's shadow will pass over the moon. A lunar eclipse.
Will and Grady, along with a dog whose name is Vandal, because of the way he broke into the house, decide to explore the woods some more and literally stumble upon the actual swamp. To this day, this is the best looking swamp I've ever seen, real or fake. It just looks so green and goopy. It kind of reminds me of a green casserole. I know that's weird, but there's just so much texture to it, it looks like.
Where are we?
The bog is supposed to be the heart of the swamp.
Will scares Grady by saying a kid fell in a few years ago and got sucked down like quicksand.
Sucked him down like quicksand.
They feel like they are being watched, so they decide to get the heck out of there. Arriving home, Grady finds out that several animals were mauled last night by some sort of canine. They threaten to get rid of Vandal, but Grady has fallen in love with this dog and thinks it's a wolf doing it. Or should I say, a werewolf. In the name of love for his dog, Grady goes looking for the swamp hermit because Will told him that's who's been killing all the animals. After finding the hermit's house, they get a little too close and are discovered by the swamp hermit. While running for their lives, Grady springs a trap that was set by the old man. Scared to get too close, Will takes off, leaving Grady behind.
Get me out of this thing!
Now, when this episode first aired, they would have cut to a commercial break at this time, but ever since then, this episode has been split up into 2 parts, like all their Goosebumps specials, so that they fit that half-hour episode limit. After Will takes off, the swamp hermit lowers Grady to the ground and drags him through the woods while still in the trap. He takes him back to his shack and begins to eat a tasty-looking chicken leg right in front of Grady. Grady also sees the man has very long nails and hair popping out of his sleeves. The hermit notices the moon rising and starts to inspect Grady as if he's looking for signs of change. He then goes outside and starts to howl at the moon, which is as full as can be. While distracted, Grady cuts his way out of the net and escapes to the back. The hermit notices, but is surprisingly unconcerned. He has other things on his mind tonight. Grady makes it home just as the sun is setting, but not before hearing howls in the distance. As he busts through his front door, he calls out to his mom and dad, demanding they leave now. His mom says his father went into town to pick up supplies, while his sister took the car, so no one is going anywhere. In a concerned voice, she asks him what is going on. He tells her his behavior is due to the swamp hermit.
It's that swamp hermit, Mom.
I haven't mentioned this yet, but the music and sound effects throughout this episode are just so good. I mean, it's not a masterpiece or anything, but to me, it just hits all the right marks.
Did he hurt you?
No, not exactly.
Did he threaten you?
No.
What then?
He's a werewolf.
Also, this part has always bothered me. Like, he just doesn't care to mention to his mom that this dude trapped him in an animal net and then dragged him through the woods back to his shack. Start with that, and she'll be on your side. That's all forgiven though, because right after we get this great scene that builds up the tension with some good music cues and acting that is done surprisingly well.
But what if the world isn't always like that? What if you knew something was true, but you couldn't prove it? Something horrible you knew it could never be explained. What would you do then?
Vandal starts to bark, then a deer comes breaking through the window. Grady and his mom go outside to see what has happened and find the deer enclosure has been ripped through and that a deer is dead on the ground inside. His mom for some reason thinks Vandal could have done all this and proceeds to take the dog into the shed to lock him up. Grady is pissed she won't listen to him and in a savage move calls Vandal to his side while at the same time locking his mom inside the shed with a pitchfork. From this point on in the episode, everything is pretty creepy, and there are some great shots that follow. Vandal runs off, and Grady hears Will crying out for help. Nervously, Grady approaches Will's home and cautiously makes his way inside. Right then, Emily comes home and goes inside, not hearing her mom locked in the shed. Grady explores Will's home and finds it to be in a state of disarray. Furniture is knocked over, windows are broken, and a couch sits in the middle of the room looking as if a bear has climbed all over it. Grady thinks the werewolf has gotten Will, and with balls of steel, grabs a fireplace poker and makes his way into Fever Swamp. This is one of my favorite shots in the entire series, by the way. Back home, Emily is confused about where everyone is and is looking all around the house, thinking Grady is pulling a prank on her. With some utterly terrifying camera shots, we see that Emily is in fact not alone in the house. Running for her life, she makes her way back to the house and outside to the shack where her mother is. After getting inside, the two huddle together in fear as they listen to the sounds of this animal trying to get in. The beast snarls and growls as he tries to find an opening, but with no luck. Right when the girl thinks he has left, the wolf's arm breaks through the door and is quickly hit by a crowbar held by the mother. Hearing Grady in the distance cry out for Vandal, and with most likely a hurting wrist, the wolf flees into the darkness. While searching through the woods, Grady is spotted and is chased down by the werewolf, but only momentarily as he hears the sound of the net trap going off once again.
The net!
From behind a tree, the swamp hermit appears and grabs Grady, claiming,
Got him!
The hermit approaches the net, and we learn why he lives the way he does.
Not the werewolf.
You! I waited a long time for this. You took my wife and children, everything I ever loved. I swore one day I would take your heart the way you took mine.
That's a pretty intense backstory for a Goosebumps episode, but no time to dwell on it. For as he spins the net around, he realizes he has caught the wrong animal.
Run, boy!
Look out!
As the swamp hermit is assumingly torn apart by the werewolf, Grady is given a chance to escape and runs further into the woods. Not being fast enough though, he is quickly found by the werewolf and is pushed to the ground. Right as he is about to be ripped to shreds, the lunar eclipse occurs and the Earth's shadow begins to cover up the moon. The wolf cries out in agony as he starts to transform back into a human. For some crazy reason, Grady approaches this half-wolf man that lay on the ground, and we finally find out who the Werewolf of Fever Swamp really is.
Get away!
Will!
Get away, Grady!
You're the werewolf.
I don't want to hurt you, but I can't help myself, Grady.
We learn that Will is the werewolf, which isn't too much of a surprise after it turned out not being the hermit. But quickly, I had to give this episode credit for involving a lunar eclipse in their finale. Now, I'm sure other werewolf movies have done this, I don't know, but to me, it's such a cool idea to have a lunar eclipse occur, which momentarily gives our characters one last chance to have a conversation. As the moon starts to shine bright once again, Grady has missed his chance to run and is picked up by Will, who's completely changed back to our werewolf. Right when you think Grady is as good as dead, Vandal comes running to the rescue and chomps down on the wolf's arm. The werewolf throws Vandal into the woods and shifts his focus back to Grady, but only momentarily, as Vandal comes right back and jumps at the wolf's chest, causing him to stumble backwards down a hill. Vandal and Grady watch on as the swamp sucks Will down like quicksand.
Thanks, Vandal. Thanks, boy. Poor Will.
The two leave together as we see bubbles rising from the swamp as it completely consumes the werewolf. My goodness, what an intense ending for a Goosebumps episode. 2 deaths and one of them happened to be a young kid. Of course, it's not all over yet. It wouldn't be a Goosebumps episode without a twist at the end. Later that night, the two parents spy on Grady as he sleeps, hoping he has gotten over the nightmares he's been having. Luck you, Goosebumps. I guess I just couldn't help but to add a fake ending in the form of a dream sequence. I hate dream sequences. I remember that scene scared the crap out of me as a kid. I wasn't expecting it. As Grady awakes, covered in sweat, we see through his window that the moon is full. From the swamp, the bones of the werewolf rise up, as if even in death, it can't resist the full moon. Grady, looking to be almost hypnotized, makes his way to the balcony and stares up at the moon. With eyes wide open, he raises his hands to his mouth and lets out a howl. And there you have it. That's the Werewolf of Fever Swamp. The show ends with R.L. waving goodbye with some sort of werewolf arm, and that concludes season 1 of Goosebumps. The Werewolf of Fever Swamp released on VHS in 1997, and Billboards Magazine listed this as the 19th best-selling children's video of that year. It's the only Goosebumps episode to appear on that list from what I can find. While every other episode of Goosebumps in the UK was given a rating of PG, The Werewolf of Fever Swamp was given a rating of 12 or over. This was due to its depictions of animals being haunted or killed. My final thoughts are, this episode is hands down one of the best ones. Everything from how it was filmed, acted, to how much of the plot actually makes sense. To wrap this up, I wanted to take a moment to pay tribute to the Swamp Hermit. Out of all the Goosebumps characters, I think this one got it the worst. We learned that the werewolf had killed his wife and kids some time ago, and since then, he has chosen to live right in the middle of the swamp in order to hunt this wolf. Right when he thinks he has caught this beast, he is presumably attacked and killed by the wolf. Even in his last moments, he's telling Grady to run. After rewatching this episode, I like to think that the night before the full moon, when Grady is stuck in the net still inside the shack, the hermit goes outside and starts to howl at the moon. To me, this is his battle cry. He's letting the werewolf know that he is ready for tonight. Kind of like when Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie Predator screams out, letting the predator know he is ready for war. There's so much more I wanted to talk about in this episode, but it's already getting pretty long. I hope you guys are enjoying these Goosebump videos. I put a lot of time and effort into them, so I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a like. Doing this, you'll let me know that you want to see more, and if you do, go ahead and subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know what your favorite Goosebumps episode is, and what you thought of this one. Take care, everyone. Have a great year, and remember, never go chasing your dog into the woods, for you just might find a werewolf instead. Good night. Ugh.